you formally start the webinar and introduce all of us on the program, and let's start it off. And Prashant will join.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So, on behalf of the Center for Science and Environment, I'm Akin Biswas, and I welcome all of you who have joined us for today's webinar. Ever since this pandemic hit us, we have been doing webinars on various climate change and environment management, and we have been getting overwhelming response and participation in all the events that we have done so far. And we have received over 1,500 registration for this webinar, and I apologize to those who could not register themselves because of the gap we had. And we are also streaming this event on various social media platforms so that those who couldn't register can also see this event live. In this webinar, we are privileged to have some of the best think tanks to talk about issues that we have highlighted in our report on plastic waste management, which we will release shortly. And we are honored to have Geeta Menonji, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India. We have Dr. Prashant Gargava, Member Secretary, Central Pollution Control Board, shortly joining with us. We also have Mr. Sanjeev Rodriguez, Commissioner, City Corporation of Panaji, Goa, joining this webinar as panelist. So I welcome all of you once more. And we also have our very own Sunita Narayanji, the Director General of Center for Science and Environment, to present the findings of our report and to moderate the panel discussion there. So Center for Science and Environment is known for its research, its lobbying and communicating the urgency of development that is both sustainable and equitable. And we believe that the scenario today demands using knowledge to bring about change, and this is what we aim to do in CSE. CSE has worked on solid waste management for past some years. We published Not in My Backyard in 2016, which kind of marks a landmark, and several other reports thereafter, which established the principle of segregation at source and have also set up the forum of cities that segregate. Now we are scaling up this work, and I have the privilege to join this dynamic team as director. And we have initiated some very interesting initiatives like the School of Circular Economy, where we do research and do capacity building of various stakeholders. We have set up the Forum of Cities that Segregate, where we engage with the city governments directly to build their understanding on the issues to catalyze action. And we also have initiated Zero Waste Cities to create a model of waste governance for further application. So regarding today's webinar, it is about our work on plastic waste. And in this webinar, we will focus on the following issues. So first of all, the quantum of plastic waste that we need to inventorize. And this includes both the plastic production data as well as the data on plastic waste. Now, when we talk about plastic recycling, what do we actually mean about it? So what is our learning from the industry, both formal and informal? And do we have a packaging rule that is suited and designed for recycling? Or is recycling should be seen as the way forward to manage the plastic waste in future? And then we have the challenge to deal with the multi-layered plastic, the carry bags, and the single-use plastics that forms the largest share of the colossal plastic waste challenge that we have to deal with today. And we will also talk about the extended producer responsibility, which is a landmark legal instrument. But we going forward, we need to see how do we best implement it. And we will also discuss how do we reinforce the plastic recycling business, which is probably another big agenda in future for economic sustainability, greater environment compliance, and to reduce the occupational hazard of people who are involved in this business. And last but not the least, how do we ensure segregation at source? Now, this is a much debated and much talked issue, and we will all probably agree that segregation is a mandatory and a fundamental rule towards establishing a sustainable waste management practice. So we have a lot to talk about today with the wonderful panelists that we have. But before we take this discussion any further, if I may request Sunita ma'am to kindly invite our distinguished guest to e-release the report and then initiate the panel discussion there. Sunita ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, Atin. I mean, this e-release is so undramatic, but still, Geeta ji, can I request you, Sanjeet, can I request you, and Atin, can I request you to hold up the report? I can't see Geeta. Geeta, Sanjeet. Okay. He doesn't have a copy. He couldn't get it to go up. But thank you. Thank you very much. Good. Good. Okay, Atin.
So, ma'am, if I may request you to kindly, present the findings of the report and then moderate the panel discussion, please.
Definitely. Thank you, Atin. And again, I join Atin in welcoming all of you to this webinar. I think, for CSC, these are very important meetings because we are hoping to build a much better informed opinion about what to do on critical issues, and that's why we are doing this. I have a presentation and I'll go through it, and then I will ask Geeta ji as well as Sanjeet to speak about their experiences. So let me begin. Is my presentation clear? Is my presentation clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing I just wanted to make clear to all of us is that, plastic is becomes such an ubiquitous and essential item in our lives. Literally anything we touch has plastic. And now with COVID-19, of course, the amount of plastic waste has gone up and the amount of plastic use has gone up enormously. But the fact is that the entire world had thought that the problem of plastic had gone away. And if you think about it, in the 60s and 70s, the more developed part of the world talked about the plastic waste problem. But then it found that, it thought it had got rid of it. It had recycled it, or it had buried it, or it had shipped it to places where it could have been handled. But no. In the past few years, and this is really in the immediate last few years, we have learned how plastic waste today has become the top environmental problem of the world, one of the top environmental problems. We are finding it's even filling up our oceans. It is destroying marine aquatic life. Some level, think about it as the last frontier has been breached. And this then tells us the scale of the plastic problem and the fact that we really have not dealt with it as yet. Now, in India, plastic waste is in our face. It's literally everywhere. At some level, it's become the sign of human activity in our country. I mean, for most of us who travel by train or travel by car, we travel across the country, we know that we have hit human civilization the minute we see plastic waste. Whether it's a village, whether it is along the tracks of a train track, or whether it is the town, the sign of a town coming, we know that we have hit human activity because we can see the waste. Now that's not good. On the other hand, we also find that our per capita use and waste is growing. And as we get richer, we know that we will get more plastic in our waste. The good news is that the government has put plastic on the top agenda. Our Prime Minister has said that phasing out single-use plastic is necessary, not just for the welfare of the environment, but also for aquatic life. The question that we are talking about today and what we want to discuss is, are we doing enough to manage plastic waste? What do we do? What should be our approach? How do we make sure that we can actually find solutions to what is becoming an extremely difficult problem? One of the first things that we have to start understanding there is how much do we generate. Now, when we looked at it, and one of the efforts in our report, and I hope you will download it and see it, one of the efforts in this report was really to just put together what is it that we know about plastic waste in the country. And if you look, you will see that there are actually only two reports that are there, and that is why I wanted very much for Prashant Bhargava from CPCB to join us, because they have done the only work that is available in this country on the estimation of plastic waste. We can say it is not good enough, but the fact is it's the only work. And we need to make sure that we can work to improve the methodologies of inventorization of the waste. The CPCB annual report of 2018-19 says that plastic waste generation is roughly 3.3 million metric tons per annum. This data comes from the state boards. Now, what is not clear in this report is what is the methodology? How have state boards actually estimated the amount of plastic waste generation? That is not still clear, and it is something that we need to do further work to understand this so that we can work with the state boards to improve methodology for the future. But what is very clear is that this ballpark figure looks okay, because if you look at it in the context of what we know is the total municipal solid waste generation, that is estimated to be 55 to 65 million metric tons. So plastic waste is between 5 to 6% of the total waste that we generate. Now that's ballpark figure wise, it looks roughly okay. But again, I'm going just by, by back of the envelope calculations. We really don't have a total fix on this. But the fact is, when I compare the 18-19 report to the earlier estimation which CPCB had done for 2015, it is lower. The CPCB estimate that they had put out in 2015 was roughly 5 million tons. Now, when you look at the methodology that CPCB used in 2015, it was a methodology to actually go to the landfill sites, collect samples of the plastic waste that are there, estimate plastic waste as a proportion of the total waste that is generated, extrapolate it then to the city and then to the country. Now that's one methodology that we know that was used. The other methodology, as I said, which is in the annual report collected from the state boards, puts it at 3.3 million tons. So anywhere between 3.3 to 5 million tons is the figures that we have currently. And frankly, my request would be that we don't spend too much time quibbling about the reports. We really look at how to improve methodologies. And we also focus on what do we know. The first thing that we do know very clearly is that generation of waste is increasing as states become richer. And this data is very clear. Goa, and we have Sanjit with us, is at the top of the plastic waste generator pile as per the 2018 report. It generates 61 grams per capita per day. The national average is 7.6 grams per capita per day. So just look at the extent of waste that one state, rich state, tourism-heavy state of Goa produces. Delhi, which is also a rich state, produces something like 37 grams per capita per day. Tripura is 0.20 grams per capita per day. So as we get richer, as we urbanize, as cities become bigger, you will see that plastic waste generation increases. And this also comes out very clearly when you look at the states which are generating plastic. And 7 states generate the bulk of the plastic in the country. Maharashtra 12%, Tamil Nadu 12%, Gujarat 11%, West Bengal 9%, Karnataka 8%, Uttar Pradesh, Delhi, and the remaining states, which includes Goa incidentally, produce the remaining 34%. So clearly we are seeing affluence, state of development going with the amount of waste, and of course population going with the amount of waste that is generated. The other thing that these studies show us, the two studies done by CPCB show us that the plastic waste that we find in landfills is potentially recyclable. And this then, and I make this point because this then gives us a very good insight into what do we mean in terms of recycling. We have a clear idea of the categories of plastic and their recycling potential, which is also been, which is something that has come out very clearly in India. But the 2015 study of CPCB found that 94% of the waste in landfills was thermoplastic, which is technically recyclable. 67% of that was HDPE, LDPE category, which is also completely as part of our list of what is recyclable material. It is recyclable. If you look at HDPE on the side of the table or LDPE, in both cases, our categorization shows us that it is recyclable. And in one case, it is all about milk pouches, carry bags, recycling bins, base cups. The other one, LDPEs, plastic bags, various containers, dispensing bottles, wash bottles. But the waste that we found, that CPCB found in its extremely important and very interesting 2015 study was that 67% was in this category. Now, when you dig deeper, that you basically find that the plastic in landfills and drains, and there are now more studies coming out on the plastic waste that is found in drains, is either one that cannot be sorted out or has not been sorted out or is too expensive to recycle. So when you look at the waste and you biomine the waste, if you were to look at it, and you become a waste detective, you find that it's multi-layered plastic, gutka pouches, mixed plastic waste, contaminated food waste, etc., etc. So in some senses, what you're finding from the two studies, 2015 and then 2018, you're finding that the plastic waste is technically recyclable, potentially recyclable, and yet it's in landfill sites. So the agenda one that we are putting out today is clearly to improve the inventory of waste. But instead of just looking at a new method, just collection of data, we need to design studies that actually look at what is being wasted and why. This is more important than the absolute number of what we generate and how much we waste. So what we are arguing at CSC is that the future studies that we design, and we will also be doing some of these, we need to look at the characteristic of the plastic waste, because this will help us to work out its management, change what we must not produce, or change the way we produce packaging so that it can be recycled. So essentially, we need to improve inventorization because we want to improve the management of the waste. The second agenda that we are saying is that we need to understand the material balance of plastic. If you look at it, and this is where, and I will be discussing this even in my later part of my presentation, the real politics of plastic is in the benign use of the benign word recycling. If you look at it globally, industry has managed to change the narrative on plastic by arguing that we can use as much as we want, we can throw as much as we want because it will be recycled. But the one or two studies that exist globally suggest that roughly 80% of the plastic that is generated in the world becomes waste at some time of its life. But the most shocking part of the study is that only 9% of the total waste that is generated in the world has ever been recycled. And of the 9%, only 10% was recycled more than once, 12% of that has been incinerated, and 80% of the plastic that is manufactured in the world has really ended up in our landfills, our water bodies, and our oceans. So it's important, not just in India, but across the world, that we actually get more wise about the word recycling now and understand that in much greater depth. And this is where, in India, we need to understand the politics of recycling. If you look at the frequent statements, unfortunately, those statements are never backed up with reports. But nevertheless, if you look at the statements of Indian industry, they basically argue that we don't have a plastic problem because 60% of what we generate is recycled. 70% in registered facilities, 20% by unorganized sector, 10% by us in our homes. When we've tried to understand the basis of methodology of this statement by industry, that report has mysteriously vanished from their website. So nevertheless, this statement, you will see, if you go to the website, you will see it frequently used by Indian industry to argue that we don't have a plastic waste problem. Yet you and I know that we do have a plastic waste problem. So it's clearly, we need to understand what then is going wrong. Now, this is where we need to deconstruct the very word recycling. If you look at this, CPCB has identified, and many other organizations as well, but CPCB has clearly said there are 4 ways of doing recycling. There's primary recycling, where the products are as good as the original. This is very rare, costs a lot of money, not done. Secondary recycling is really where most of the recycling happens in India and across the world, where the products are have less demanding performance. And the bulk of the recycling, if you see in India and in other parts of the world, is done in this way, where the plastic is sorted, it is melted, and pellets are made, which then go into making new bags, new items of production. Of course, there is a third way of doing recycling, which is tertiary recycling, where you produce fuel and chemicals from waste, or you have quaternary recycling, where you do incineration for energy, which is really that you burn the plastic and get some fuel value out of it. So, but if you look at most of the recycling and what our data is showing, that it's really about secondary recycling. To some extent, there is incineration, but most of it is secondary. And why do we say this? Because in the same report, that's the annual report of CPCB, they actually have put together, and we have it in our report here, the ways in which states are doing plastic waste recycling or disposal. And if you look at what states have reported, bulk of them say they're sending it to recyclers for processing. Now, what this means, we don't know. But this is really what the bulk of the plastic waste recycling means. Some have said that they're sending it to cement plants for incineration. That's obviously where the plastic cannot be even sent for processing. And certain state governments have said that they're using it for road construction. But when we have tried to, my colleague Dinesh got in touch with the agencies who are doing biomining of landfill. And he wanted to understand from them that as you are doing the biomining, the landfill remediation, what are you finding in terms of the plastic waste? And they all reported back that they have not done a study, but they are finding that plastic is the biggest problem that they're having when they're doing biomining. So it's very clear that our landfills, whatever is the waste that is generated, is a plastic problem, because the rest of the waste does degrade. Plastic does not degrade. So I think it's very important for us, therefore, to put the whole idea, the question of recycling on the top of our agenda. What can be recycled? How economical is it? Who does it? Now, this is where data is grossly absent. And this is where future work must happen so that we understand more what can be done. But even as we do this, I want to set out what, from CSC's point of view, are some of the key learnings and what we need to do. So one key learning that we would like to put out is that wherever we know now very clearly that what cannot be recycled, must be phased out. And that clearly is very clear from the limited studies. And yes, they are limited, but the fact is they are the only studies that we have that tell us that the real plastic waste problem is coming from what we know as multi-layered plastic. Now, the plastic waste management rules in 2016 understood this, and they stipulated a phase out. But this was amended in 2018. If you look at it, the 2016 rules clearly say manufacture and use of multi-layered plastic should be phased out in 2 years' time. But in 2018, I am assuming because of that's what I said, the politics of recycling, we inserted the words which is non-recyclable, non-energy recoverable, or with no alternative use, if any. Now, the fact is, and this is really where I talked about, this is the politics. The fact is, we don't know how are we going to sort out multi-layered plastic. It's not economical for recycling. We know that it's not collected. We know that it ends up in our landfill. We know the few studies that are available of the waste and drains, we know that it's multi-layered plastic, which is the biggest, which is the one thing that is invariably found. So even if it is technically recyclable, because yes, as I said, and I'll go back to it, technically you can do tertiary recycling using multi-layered plastic to produce fuel, or you can do quaternary recycling, which is incineration for energy. So technically it is possible to do it, but how feasible is it? We know it isn't feasible. So what we at CSE are therefore saying that one of our requests would be that we really seriously review the lack of restrictions on multi-layered plastic, and we come out with a phase-out ban on these products. Our agenda 4B is on carry bags. Now, we know carry bags are difficult to recycle. The rules 2016 say carry bags made of virgin or recycled plastic shall not be less than 50 micron in thickness. But if you look at it, in the last many years now, states have found it is not possible to ban based on thickness. It is almost impossible to enforce. So many states have put a complete ban on carry bags. States are also finding that they are being sold bio bags, biodegradable carry bags. But these are also very difficult to monitor and enforce. So I think our request, again, one of the agendas that we are putting out is that the carry bag ban needs to be enforced. We need to understand enforcement in states where there is a complete ban, and then take it across the country. This is a simple, this is one of those low-hanging fruit that we could certainly work on immediately. 4C is really about defining and banning items of single-use plastic. Now, one of the things that we found is that there is no universal definition of what we mean by single-use plastic. Our Prime Minister has put this agenda clearly on the table, but there is no universal definition. But countries have made it quite simple and have argued that single-use plastic, for instance, Australia and EU say, are shopping bags, cups, straws, packaging items, anything that is intended to be used once and discarded. But in India, we have classified plastic waste, but not defined what we would call single-use plastic. The good thing is that state governments are ahead, and they are actually finding that because they have such a problem of plastic waste, states are defining what they mean by single-use plastic. They're banning these items for use, and this then improves their ability to manage plastic waste. Now, what we did was that we looked at all the state action, and we looked at what have different states done. And please take a look at table number 6 on page 24-25. My colleagues and I have put together this table just for us to understand what are states beginning to do, and if this can become the first level, which is the first level of restrictions that can come in. So clearly states are banning plastic carry bags, which I've spoken about, but they're also banning plastic cutlery, plastic coated paper plates, paper bags, teacups have been banned by different states. Food processing and packaging plates used in hotels have been banned by Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu is one of the states which has the most extensive list. Water packets has been banned by Tamil Nadu. Plastic straw has been banned both by Tamil Nadu and Maharashtra. Plastic banner, flex, plastic flags by Kerala, Karnataka. Packaged drinking water has not been banned, but certain state governments have said it will not be available in government meetings, or they have said that bottles less than 200 ml will not be used. Certain have also banned plastic sheets. So the reason we did this is that this helps us to understand what is the first layer of those items which cannot be recycled, which we can do without, which we can and we must be able to restrict so that we can manage the remaining amount of waste better. The agenda 5 is that EPR, which is Extended Producer Responsibility, which is included in Plastic Rules 2016, should be simple and enforceable. Now, we are arguing that we should step back and actually understand how to begin in implementation and how to do implementation a little better. By first collating data provided by companies to state boards on how much waste is produced and what they are doing to take it back and process it. Remember, this is part of the Plastic Rules 2016. It's mandatory. Many companies are doing so. So the first job should be to collate this data. Secondly, let's do a deep dive to understand the business of taking it back. Let's also understand the business of processing. Based on this, let's make the rules mandatory, enforceable, and make the producer pay for plastic that is produced, producer of plastic pay for its disposal. But the most critical issue is EPR should be simple, it should be enforceable. The sixth agenda is to incentivize business of recycling and to decode recycling. Currently, we throw and we forget. The informal sector collects it, segregates it, sorts it, and then sells it. We do not include this business in our land use. I have seen very few cities which now in their land use actually even provide space for plastic recycling. I don't know how many of you who are attending today's webinar have had the opportunity to visit Delhi's most important plastic market, which is at the outskirts of Delhi. I have. Now, I think DDA does a lot of things wrong, but the one thing that they did do right is to create one large space for what they have called Asia's largest plastic market. But what we need is land use to be created, space to be created in our cities so that we can actually promote this business. We need to incentivize it. We still have a GST on it, even though it has been lowered. And we, as producers of this waste, do not pay for it. In fact, we treat it as illegal, as dirty, and as polluting. So we need a new approach for this. We need to ensure that the informal, which is cost effective, because please remember, the reason why the US is not able to do recycling and was sending it to China was that it is too expensive for it to do recycling. It is the poor, it is the informal economies in our world which make this business actually cost effective. But we need to support them so that they can clean up, so that they don't have to work in such dirty environments. We also need to decode the very word recycling to understand what is toxic additives used in the material, what is multi-layered, what is multicolored, what can't be recycled, and then we need to act on it. One of my personal experiences was that when I went to Tikri, this plastic market, I found that one of the things that they just cannot recycle is the plastic on our slippers. So they had these heaps of the plastic slipper plastic, which then gets burnt. They have no other way of dealing with it. Now, I know we need slippers. I know we need shoes. I'm not arguing that we should do without shoes. But we clearly need to find out what are the alternatives then? What can be done about that? And how do we improve the business of making items so that they are recyclable? The seventh agenda is segregation at source. We know this, that anything that will work means that we need recycling works when there is segregation, and this is best done at the household level. We need to work to incentivize state and municipalities. And the most important message that I want to give today is that we need to include municipal governments in the discussion on plastic waste management. This is where the real action is. And this is why I'm happy that we have Sanjit with us today. Lastly, plastic waste management needs much more research, much more data collection, sharing on what is working, sharing on what needs to be done. And this will be our agenda, CSC's agenda for the coming years. We will look forward to our and your engagement in this sector. So thank you very much for listening to me on this. I hope this was useful. Thank you. Atin, I will now ask Geeta to speak, and I can then ask Sanjit to speak in case Prashant has not been able to join. Geeta, can I now request you? Prashant is also joined. Yes. So Geeta, can I now request you to speak?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much, and good evening, Shri Atin Biswas, Sunita Narayan, Dr. Gargav, Shri Rodrigues, and all you friends who have joined us here today. It's really an honor to be present here today as CSC releases its report on plastic waste management. Ms. Narayan had asked me that, I could speak on EPR, and I most certainly shall, but I think I'd like to take some time to stay with the larger of plastic waste management that has been, dealt with in the report, and of which EPR forms a very important part, but it is one part. So I'd like to first stay with the report. So I'd like to begin by complimenting the CSC team for a very thoughtfully put together publication. There are a few things that I found particularly, outstanding about this report. Firstly, it was short. I think that's very important in this day and age where attention spans are short. I think this publication is short. It is crisp. It presents most of the things in a very appealing manner. It covers almost all the key concerns relating to plastic. And what I found very attractive was the fact that it is easy to understand language. It is strengthened by presence of facts and data. And most importantly, it focuses on very doable things. It's almost like we have a to-do items list in the report or coming out from the report. So as a policy maker, it is this that drew me to the report particularly. And it's almost as if it was a program for governments, both at the central and the state levels, as to what to do when they're confronted with the whole issue of plastic waste management. But I must say that I feel very vindicated that much of what we've been working on in the ministry finds mention in the report. And it's heartening to see that there's a kind of a sync that exists largely in terms of issues that we are addressing at this point of time within the ministry. So while I enjoyed reading the report as a whole, I must say that the account of the visit to the wholesale market, which Neetaji was just mentioning, for the junk plastic and the visit to the recycling plant, both these things brought home the very irksome, issues that lie behind the immensely comforting idea that once we recycle, the problem of plastics is solved. And at a personal level, I feel that there is a need for all of us to face the uncomfortable, confront the uncomfortable, to be able to understand the magnitude and the nature of the crisis that we are actually facing. So this was as far as the report goes, and now I would move on to the subject of extended producers' responsibility. The extended producers' responsibility, I'd like to take you back to the Plastic Waste Management Rule 2016, because it was really in the context of these rules rather, that the whole idea of EPR really took shape. And in that sense, the plastic waste management rules was, had many firsts to its credit. Apart from the whole idea of EPR, it began by prescribing a minimum thickness of, plastic carry bags, whatever it may be worth. But apart from that, the scope and the possible use of plastic for roads in waste to energy, the identification of these areas as potential areas for plastic management. And the initial or the first mention that you find about banning use of plastic sachets for gutkhas, for tobacco, and pan masala. I think this comes for the first time in the 2016 plastic. And of course, mandating the responsibility for local bodies, including the Gram Panchayats. So the reach and the pan-India kind of acknowledgement that that the plastic waste management rules brought, to the forefront, I think was very, very important in terms of addressing the whole issue itself. Now, since then, why is it that the plastic waste management rules really have assumed a great deal of importance? As was mentioned earlier, with the Prime Minister announcing that India would become single-use plastic-free by 2022, there was a momentum that was sort of gained, to the whole process. And subsequently, we had issued the guidelines on single-use plastic to all states and union territories. This was way back in January 2019. And we have also issued advisories for, conduct of elections, how to minimize use of plastic, single-use plastic in the conduct of elections. Of course, as yet, this is not a mandatory or it's not a ban, but it is definitely a possible code of conduct, part of the expanded code of conduct for conducting elections itself. And a large amount of our focus in the ministry has been on building awareness. So we've been having, our eco clubs, we have our Green Good Deeds program, and through these and the Swachhta Hi Seva, all these are little, pockets within which we've tried to build a kind of a mass awareness when it comes to not just pollution per se, but plastic waste and the resultant pollution. Now, like it was discussed earlier, it's not just at the central government level. In fact, in many respects, I would say the state governments have actually gone ahead. And like it was mentioned, we have about 32 states and union territories that have prohibited plastic carry bags, and they have their own, regulations when it comes to plastic carry bags and regulating the same. And also at the level of the ministry, we've tried to encourage alternatives. We have tried to work with CPET and CPCB to come up with compostable plastics, oxo-biodegradable plastics. So these we feel are areas where we need to be focusing even in the years to come. Most recently, in January 2020, we had a committee of secretaries constituted under the cabinet secretary, which actually approved of an action plan for phasing out single-use plastic that was put forward by the ministry. And there were a series of action points that were finalized. And the immediate first on our agenda was, of course, to ban certain items of single-use plastic. And we were ready to go ahead with that, which is when the lockdown and, the subsequent economic slowdown as a result of that happened. And we felt that it might be prudent for us to wait a while and then revisit the whole issue. And we are now in the process of sort of getting back to these issues. And the first one, of course, being items of single-use plastic that can be immediately taken up for a ban. So given this kind of a background about plastic waste management, I'll now come on to the extended producer responsibility. While the 2016 rules provided for extended producers responsibility, and there were a number of brand owners who actually came up and were implementing EPR, either they were directly or with the help of a third party in certain urban local bodies. There was a great deal of confusion, lack of clarity on various aspects, and about the role that various agents in this whole scheme of things were to play. And it was therefore that it was felt that there was a need to come up with some kind of guidelines on the extended producer responsibility, and which is how we had the draft guidelines on EPR coming now in June of 2020. And before this, while we reached this as late as June of 2020, I must share with all of you, it was preceded by a great deal of consultation. So it wasn't as if, it was simply a matter of going through a whole lot of data about varying models existing in different parts of the world and then putting it together and coming up. So as early as 2017, we had a lot of stakeholder consultations. These happened not just with industry associations, it happened with urban local bodies, with municipalities, and across the country. We had, in fact, stakeholder consultations for the Eastern Zone, Ranchi, Bangalore, Chandigarh. We visited, varying cities which have demonstrated successfully running projects, such as Indore. And these kind of learnings were factored in before we came up with the kind of guidelines that we have. Now, the uniform framework that we have now come up with essentially recognizes the key role for database, regarding plastic production, manufacture, and recycling. Now, the two need to be put together, put on a same platform, so that we are able to generate meaningful data, actionable data, and data which can be subsequently used to enforce responsibility. So I think it is really pivotal to the success of the whole EPR scheme. Having this kind of a database, which is robust, which is comprehensive, and which is able to give us the kind of information we seek to enforce responsibility and accountability. So that is really one of the key areas as far as the EPR framework is concerned at this point. Now, our guidelines are up on the website, so I'm sure many of you have had a chance. If not, please do, familiarize yourself. But broadly, I would like to say that one of the principles which governed us while we were trying to develop is not to limit ourselves to just one model for the entire country. I do acknowledge that CSE itself in its report has mentioned that it might end up with greater problems of monitoring owing to the fact that there is a diversity of systems. And the point is well taken, and we would most certainly like to address these issues. But I'd like to let you understand what it is that persuaded us to come up with these varying models. There are varying kinds of these different capabilities. There are corporates with different kinds of capabilities. There are products lending themselves to different kinds of life cycle and requiring, therefore, a different kind of treatment. So the flexibility was an important element that guided us while we were trying to come up with these models. And given the scale and size of our country, we felt that it might be a good idea to at least begin with this, concept of three distinct models. So what are the three models that we've come up with? We have, to begin with, a fee-based model, a fairly straightforward model where a fee is paid in return for the amount of plastics that is being generated. And what is this fee in turn going to be used for? We expect that it will help to create the kind of infrastructure that you need for plastic waste management, especially in the smaller municipalities. We also feel that it could help us to improve capacities of local bodies. We also foresee a significant role being played by this fee in incentivizing and strengthening the rag pickers and the informal collection mechanism that exists. And of course, a part of the fee also is earmarked for IEC activities, because I think that becomes an important part, especially when you try to look at behavior changing, activities which are an integral part of plastic waste management and the EPR process itself. So that's what the first model looks. The second model is, of course, fairly well known. It's a PRO, or a producer responsibility organization. And I don't think we really are suggesting anything new or out of the box here. But this is what we suspect would be welcomed, especially by larger corporates, many of whom are already engaged in this kind of an activity at this point. And the third model we've suggested is something called the plastic credit model, where you can, there would be authorized recyclers and co-processors and, processors who would be recycling plastics, and the credit that is earned in the form of certificates can then be traded with producers. So this is yet another model where the producer might not wish to engage, in a more sustained way through a PRO. This could be yet another model that is available. So if I were to summarize broadly the principles governing our EPR, it is essentially that any producer, importer, or brand owner can adopt any of these models. They are therefore what you would call geography neutral, brand neutral. It depends on which model suits you. And we have thought of a graded approach, beginning with, say, 30%, going up to 90% in the course of, say, 5 years. So this is enabling the manufacturers, the producers, also to comply with the requirements in a phased manner. We feel this is a more realistic acknowledgement of the reality. The portal is, of course, something that we know could be a source of concern. So we feel that data secrecy should be an important part of this portal. And we feel that all people engaged in EPR need to be necessarily registered in this portal. So this is a single stop, and there is no other portal through which anybody can engage as far as the EPR is concerned. And of course, it should be flexible. The portal should be flexible to account for any of these models and should not be imposing any limitations whatsoever. Now, at this point, even the settlements for the credits would be done online, and we feel that the share of the EPR obligation would also get clarified through this mechanism. So really speaking, this is a one-stop portal for almost everything to do with the EPR framework. Now, obviously, the process of public consultations just got over. We have received a lot of responses. We are in the process of going through them, and we are open at this point to considering each of these, including, like I said, the observation from CSE about how complicated this could potentially get. I think we are open to doing that. And at this stage, we do acknowledge that it is still sketchy. What are the nuts and bolts of this scheme are not really clear. And I think in the coming weeks, that's going to be our job to flesh it out so that we have a system that really gets into the nitty-gritties and leaves very few things unattended or sort of not addressed. Of course, as we go along, we learn and we improve. But broadly, I would say that our agenda would be to go through all these comments and try and refine them, and so that we have a portal that is ready to operate the moment we are sure about the kind of models that we are going ahead finding. So this is as far as the EPR is concerned, but I would like to take maybe a couple of minutes more and go beyond the EPR to just let you know what the ministry's priorities are at this point in time. And like you all know, we have in the ministry been very firm about banning of all import of plastic waste. And it remains that way. And I think this is to be seen in sync with the whole issue of plastic waste management. You cannot be looking at imports in isolation from what you're doing in the domestic area. And we acknowledge that since the problem of plastic waste domestically has not yet been addressed, there could be possibly no case for permitting import of plastic waste. So that remains banned. And in the coming months, the other priority areas for us is first and foremost to come up with a clear definition of single-use plastic. Undoubtedly, this is not just desirable because having so many definitions across the states is not really something we would want. But more importantly, I think even in terms of actual manufacturers for the production to continue, it is very, very difficult when you have a series of absolutely disparate, regulatory regimes across states. So we would most certainly want that to end and have some kind of clarity on the definition of single-use plastic. Then we are looking to ban and phase out certain items of single-use plastic at the earliest. Like I mentioned, this exercise had already reached a certain degree of finality, and owing to the lockdown and subsequent developments, we've had to hold it back. But I think we are ready to revisit that. So that would be very high on our priority now. We would also be beginning a process of reviewing the use of multi-layered packaging. I mean, we do acknowledge that it is a very complex process, but I think it is important to begin that initiative and to see whether we can, have a more nuanced approach while we address this matter. Instead of just taking up multi-layered packaging as a whole, can we now look at it in segments? Can we look at those items which are particularly more difficult and less possible to segregate, sort, and recycle? So I think that would be a focus.
Good.
Alternatives to items of plastics. I think it's important, and it's not a concern that we'd like to brush away. So we would be supportive of and also encourage, studies, initiatives that help us identify alternatives to plastics in various sectors. We are also looking to, revisit the matter of carry bag bags. I mean, are we looking only at prescribing thicknesses? Should we go beyond that to banning? Yes, it's an open question. I think we would most certainly like to consider that also. Another area which we are looking at is establishing some kind of standards in recycling. I mean, is it something that can be left entirely unregulated? Can it, at least formal recycling mechanisms, can they have some standards? Do standards in recycling actually improve the recycling process itself, thereby affecting the overall recycling of plastics? I think these are issues we would also like to. And of course, through this portal, we are hoping that by the end of the exercise, we have a robust database on plastics and plastic waste in the country. So these are really our focus areas, in the coming month. And before I conclude, I'd just like to go back to the report, because finally, that's what we are all here today for. So the report very rightly observes that plastic could be, the sign of the Anthropocene, sign of human prosperity. But I think it also represents the unending quest of human beings for greater and greater comfort and to make their lives more comfortable. So taking off from Sunita ji's point in her foreword about, she had referred to Hindu mythology. I think I would add to that, saying that the Trinity in the Hindu mythology stands for Srishti, creation, Sthiti, which is preserving, and Samhara, which is destruction. But so this is the order of the universe. It's all very fine, but human beings have, through this plastic and many other activities, introduced an element that seems to disrupt this order completely. So the restoration of the order, I don't think is going to happen through yet another incarnation. Wishful thinking, not going to happen. But I think it's most certainly going to happen through human ingenuity, through human intelligence, but most importantly, through, through an attitude where we are able to read the signs and signals that are all around us, and we modify the way we live, the way we produce, the way we consume, and most importantly, the way we reuse and recycle. So thank you very much, Sunita ji, for that opportunity. And let's hope we are able to move on from here and do things together. Thank you.
Thank you, Geeta. I think everyone will agree. It's a very, very engaging, very good. What has helped us all to understand is how the ministry is looking at it. And I'm really happy to also see that there's so much synergy in our thinking and our approaches on how to move. Obviously, being outside the government, we will be more aggressive in pushing, but that's our role. But I think it's very important to see that we're all on the same page on this. And I think that's where we look forward to discussing with you on all the agendas that you have now outlined. What can we do further with you? How can we discuss this? How can we detail it out? Because there are two things that, Geeta ji, that I want to raise here before I ask Prashant ji to come in. One, I was quite amazed when I did this booklet, and I actually did. I thought there was so much research on plastics that when I asked my colleagues to put together a paper on plastic management, I thought it was just child's play. And I thought, there's so much work, we just have to put it together. And I was quite amazed to see how little we actually know about this. And I think the effort in this paper is not to be the last word, but actually to be only the first word. And to put together how little we know, so that we as researchers, we as people who are concerned about this can actually do a lot more work to make the management system more robust. Because if we don't have that data to do management, I really believe that we are not in a state today to design a good EPR, because we don't know exactly enough about the way plastic is being used. So I would argue that we need a little time to develop our better understanding so that we can get better policies and actions as well. And I think that's where our effort is going to be, to actually build together. And I think your openness, your frankness in sharing this with all of us gives us the confidence that we are all on the right path and that we will work on this further. My last point on the Hindu mythology, just to explain this, I think it's very interesting. I have always been amazed that Hinduism has actually put Shiva, the god of destruction, to be as important as the god of creation, even more in certain cases. And I think as environmentalists, one of the things that we are learning is that the things that cannot be destroyed are the environmental problems of the world. If you look at it, carbon dioxide in the air is today the cause of climate change, because its life is so long that it just can't be destroyed. Ozone is the same issue. We created CFC. It actually ended up with destroying. It's a long life. Durability is how we define the products. DDT was supposed to be this very long life chemical, and now plastic. So I think as human beings, we also have to understand that even as comfort is important, I think there was something that nature is telling us when it says that destruction is as important as creation. So we must now think about the innovation of the future must be about how much you can recycle and how much you can destroy, must be part of the inventiveness for the future. Otherwise, we will have further problems. But thank you so much for your comments, your intervention. We are all very enriched by it. I will now move to Prashant ji to make his point. Prashant, can I now bring you in? Prashant, if you can put on your camera.
Yes.
Your video. Yes. Prashant, I wanted to thank CPCB particularly because, as I said in my presentation, the only research we have on plastics actually comes from CPCB. And both your 2015 report and your 2018 report have given us the basis of understanding what exists in the country. So that is particularly why we were very keen that you, as Member Secretary of CPCB, help us to understand what do you know and do you see as the future going ahead. Prashant.
Thank you very much, Sunita ji. At the outset, my compliments to CSE and your team in particular, which has put up a very comprehensive report. I have gone through the report, and then it really comprehensively brings in all the important elements of the entire plastic waste management. Geeta ma'am, of course, has given very in-depth of the government policies of the thinking for the way forward, especially the EPR that is under the discussion. When very comprehensive subject has been covered, I just want to share few of my thoughts on this. First of all, I completely agree with you when you say that while we know, at the same time, we know almost little about the plastic waste management. And then we will be happy to work with you closely to put up a very robust methodology for generating data at various steps of entire plastic waste management, starting with inventory to the different end users and all the research or the recycling activities, formal, informal. I think we will work together and then we can put up sufficient good work that can throw more.
Prashant, I'm getting requests to ask you to be a little louder. People are not able to hear you clearly, so there's complaints from the. Sorry.
Okay.
Much better.
So very quickly, what I was saying that CPCB while has given the data 2015 and also 18, and that's our role defined in the rules that we are supposed to come up with these kind of reports. And then I compliment CSE for taking up the data from there and in a very comprehensive manner bring all the issues in the report that you have brought out. It practically covers each and every aspect of entire plastic waste management. In fact, this is one of the most difficult to handle kind of environmental challenges. We find that plastic is deep into our life, our day-to-day activities, and therefore at times we realize that probably it is difficult to live without plastic. So it's extremely important that we start looking into ways as to how do we manage plastic. When I'm saying manage plastic, that means I'm not just talking about plastic waste. I think wherever it is possible to avoid use of plastic, wherever alternatives are available, we have been talking about banning single-use plastic, or you spoke about multi-layer plastic or gutka pouches, which are difficult to be collected and recycled. We'll have to find some ways to do away with these plastics wherever it is avoidable. The second argument that always we find is about plastic being a cheaper product. At some point of time, of course, economics is important, but at some point of time, we'll have to realize that clean environment will not come free. If it is a cost, we'll have to pay that cost. If we have to find alternative which may not be that cheap, then we'll have to go for a costly item, to avoid or the minimize the menace of the plastic, which is creating havoc in our lives. Two important players, of course, there are multi stakeholders, but most importantly is the producer, which has been made responsible for collecting the waste and then also ensuring that it gets processed in a scientific manner. And second important player is about the ULBs. So when at CPCB, when we register or when we approve a plan for EPR, we make sure that either a producer, as mandated in the rules, has a very robust system, or they have very well-defined a channel of collecting the waste, or they engage with the ULBs. So any producer who comes up with a proposal saying that we will engage only with one ULB or two ULB here and there, and then so we don't approve that. We make sure that ULBs are closely engaged with that, because these are the two entities that have very large role to play. As far as CPCB is concerned, as I said, we will be very glad to work closely with CSE and other partners to put up a very sound methodology of collecting data, not only on the quantities, but also on different end uses, the different sort of standards, different recycling practices, what is happening in informal sector or formal sector, and then putting up a good research study. So that is something I have taken note of that, and I certainly would want to go ahead on that. In terms of CPCB's role, we have been putting up different SOPs, different standards, use of plastic for different end usage, be it cement manufacturing. So what could be the standard for these? Even for the alternative to the plastic carry bag, which is a big problem. So there are compostable carry bags available, and very recently we have revisited our SOPs. Idea was to promote compostable. Of course, there are difficulties in implementing, but we are also trying to put some sort of framework to make sure that only genuine compostable carry bags are available in the market. So we are promoting. We are depending on the CPAT results. We are registering compostable carry bag manufacturers, and then we are also putting up a framework as to how to ensure that fake products are not there in the market. We are working on a barcode system for that, so that one is able to trace the genuinity. And then we are also recommending for sort of mandating state boards, and also CPCB will do that to actually get into the market, pick up some samples, and then make sure that if we come across any fake manufacturer, then stringent action is taken. So we'll work closely. I think EPR is under discussion, and we will provide all the support to the government in putting up something which is implementable. It's extremely important. The rules need to be made in such a way that they get implemented. We'll have to put up a very stringent monitoring framework to ensure that these rules or the EPR framework get enforced. We'll work very closely and provide all assistance that we can provide, and also learning from your research, your team, which has put a lot of efforts in compiling the data, analyzing the data, doing in-depth analysis, and putting forward all the issues at one place. So I think I don't have much to add here. And with this, I'll close. And CPCB, we, as you said, we are all on the same page. So we will continuously work closely with all those who wish to make this country environment, with clean environment, better livable place. So we'll be partnering with each one of them. So with this, I'll close. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, Prashant. No, please.
I'm keeping it short.
I understand.
Yeah,
no, thank you for joining us. I know you are not well, and please take care. This is way too important.
Yes.
Winter season is starting. We will need every bit of your time. So please take care.
Thank you.
But Prashant, before you go, I just want to say that I think the most important thing that we have come up with, and we will work with you on this, is we need to have more robust methodologies on
exactly.
Inventorizing the waste, but also inventorizing what cannot is being recycled and how it is being recycled.
Yes.
And we will, my colleague Atin will be in touch. I will be in touch with CPCB. We will work out some common research studies so that over this next year, we can actually do some work, further in-depth work, and then present it to everybody. Because I think the more we understand about the business of plastic, the better we will be in resolving it. But thank you so much, Prashant, for joining us, and please take care.
Okay? Thank you.
Sanjeet, can I now request you to speak? Sanjeet Rodriguez is particularly very grateful that you have joined us, Sanjeet. My first learning of plastic and the problem of plastic also, it was when I with you and Panjim with you, and I learned so much in that one tour that you took me to, both the extraordinary work that you have done in Panjim, but also how difficult a challenge it was. works. And I think for me, that room, that one you took us to where you were doing the material sorting and the way you were finding what cannot be recycled, and learning to deal with the complexity of the material recovery was a really amazing thing. So that's why it's very really good that you've joined us and help us to understand how, from a municipality point of view, you see all this now happening. Please, Sanjit.
Thank you, Sunita. Thank you. And let me compliment you and the CSC team for such a wonderful report. Though I have not read it fully, but your presentation did justice to the report, and the statistics were, mind-boggling. Let me come to the point of what happens at ground level. We have heard about the rules, regulations, policies. My talk would be on what happens at ground level. I come from a city where we have started with almost 100% segregation at source. That is one factor which we have stressed upon right from 2003 when we started this campaign. That has helped us not only to understand plastic better, but we have gone and worked with recyclers at a very basic level. So it helps us in a way to understand the various forms of plastic. We have time and again gone and increased our segregation levels. So from a 4-way segregation of dry waste at household or colony level in Panjim, we have now introduced a 16-way segregation level. So every colony has 16 different fractions to segregate. Only then the city collects its waste. This has given us a further insight of which plastic has to be sent where. One of the things why we are doing it is because it affects our own survival of our tourism industry. We have been waiting for rules, we have been waiting for regulations, but on ground level, time is essence. So it is very important that we pick this and pick it at.
Sanjit, we're losing you. Sanjit? Sanjit? Has he gone? Is it on mute?
I think there are some connectivity issues.
There's some connectivity problem. Can we just be in touch with Sanjit? He's still speaking, but we can't hear him.
Yeah, we can't see him. Yeah, exactly.
No, we can see him. Now we can see. Now he can. Sanjit, we can't hear you. Sanjit?
Atin, maybe you should call him.
Atin is calling him, I think.
I'm calling.
It's calling him. Suddenly something has gone. These are technology issues. While Atin is calling Sanjit, I have a lot of questions as well. I think one of the most important questions that has come is really about the Corona time, which I will deal with after. Let's get Sanjit back. No? Okay, while we are getting him back, let me take a few questions that we have. Can we hear him now? He's back now. I can see him.
Can you hear me now?
Now, yes. Thank you, Sanjeet. Maybe you can switch off. Not clear. Not clear. Yes.
Okay. The point I was making is I don't know where I was lost, but
So
the
actually,
point
quite a way back, when you were talking about the 16-point segregation in Panjim, and the reason you brought this in was to understand the fractions of waste. So from
Okay.
there, if you could take off. Sorry, quite a way back.
We have
I'll mute myself. You're all on mute. It's not,
Amit, can you?
Can you ask somebody to switch off the other connection?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
echo.
Mr. Rodriguez, will you please check whether you have two connections going at your end? You need to mute any one of them to be able to speak on the other. Mr. Rodriguez, can you hear me? We are unable to hear you, sir, Mr. Rodriguez.
Now you can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yes, please go ahead.
Sorry for these glitches. It's as bad as the plastic we have here. So the point I was making is we need to go into this basic aspect of segregation at source, drill into people, and collect plastic in a manner where it can be recycled. Because waiting for rules, regulations, and especially ban versus no ban argument, micron versus non-micron. So all these issues create such bureaucracy at the bottom level, such fining mechanisms at the bottom level that the larger picture of recycling of plastic is lost. We have been advocating some items where a total ban is required. And, this ban cannot come in a municipality, in a state. It should be total ban of certain items. I always give an example which is very relevant to Goa and of a plastic straw. We have 10 million people coming into Goa. If everyone has just one drink with a straw in it, that is 10 million straws. Where does it go? I think straws are required for people who think they do not have mouths. Because you can easily have any drink with your mouth and you don't require straw. It's a mindset problem rather than a plastic problem. We have to eradicate such items, and there are 20 odd such items which have to be eradicated from the face of this country. The point I'm making is the other side of non-recyclable plastic. We get huge non-recyclable plastic. We have worked with co-processing. I think, Sunita, that was not dealt with very well in your presentation, as well as a lot of non-recyclable plastic can substitute coal in cement factories. Goa has been sending this plastic to cement factories all the way to Karnataka so that this can be recycled rather than create a mountain of non-recyclable waste and put it in a landfill. The only way we are landfill free is because we co-process our plastic in cement factories. I think the co-processing rate in cement factories should go up from the current 4 to 5%, which they do, to matching European standards. It will be almost to 50 to 60%. All the plastic can be gobbled up instead of setting up new incinerators. These are huge incinerators which take plastic, and Goa is doing a good job in this co-processing, because anyway they are burning coal. It is a compromise, I know, but at least this plastic will not go into the oceans. Again, compostable bags at ground level is an issue. A lot of bags have come in the market saying that with just a print saying it is a compostable bag. People are just waiting to print compostable green bag, I am not plastic, on any damn plastic bag, and they just bring it out in the market. Again, a regime has to start on investigating these bags, but it has to be done. This is another trend which has started at the lowest level. Second, we need to have proper research in material packing. It is fine that this packaging is done. Now, for example, PET bottle. A PET bottle has PET as the bottle, has HDPE as its cap, and has non-recyclable single-use plastic as its label. I mean, how do you recycle? If you want to recycle, you have to segregate these items. There should be some standard in packaging which is not being addressed to adequately. Another aspect is, how do we encourage recycling industry so that this waste is picked up? And one way to tackle plastic waste is to encourage and give incentives to recycling industry, or make some rules where recycling and recycled products are used. For example, you make a washing machine. Can we have a rule which says that 90% of the washing machine's plastic component can be of recycled plastic? Countries are doing this. It will encourage people to buy this plastic and recycle it so that it goes into this washing machine or a television or a refrigerator or whatever. Such huge items are being produced that these small rules and small tweaks can encourage recycling and collection of this plastic. One of the things which we talk about is to get out of this micron level as far as bags are concerned. See, we had, before plastic, we had a great industry of doing cloth bags or any other sustainable bag, paper bags. It is just that plastic is cheap, plastic is convenient, plastic is durable, but certain things have to stop. I'm not saying ban plastic in all its form, but carry bag is one such item which just flies from top to bottom. We need to get this. A lot of our 16-way segregation has shown us how many different types of plastic comes out, and how different people use different type of plastics for recycling. So some sort of awareness is required, not only in terms of people's mind, but even when we work with rag pickers. Today, our rag pickers have been educated. They can pronounce, if they don't know, they can identify LDP, HDP, PET, and they collect such plastic in a manner that it can be recycled. I think at ground level, trust should be given in segregating plastic in different forms, in different types. And very soon, we should have this item-wise identification, so that, PET, our plastic bottles are removed, caps are removed and put in HDP, PET is put in PET, so that recycling is easier. People pick up, people want such clean waste. The only reason why we are successful in plastic collection, in plastic recovery, and in plastic recycling is because we collect clean plastic. We collect segregated plastic. And this is the solution at the ground level to make plastic more recyclable, more collectible, and to get rid of this plastic menace which continuously flows into our ocean. I would like to many things are talked about EPR. I agree. The time is not right to have a uniform policy on EPR. But I think in Panjim, we are more talking to corporates in touching their conscience. I think that is the only way we can work with such corporates to come and fund and come and support our material recovery facilities. So what now we have gone right up to ward level with our material recovery facilities. We do not call it any yard. It is a recovery facility. People should not know it as a garbage dump or a waste collection. They are now material recovery facilities. Clean waste comes there. Clean waste goes out from there. So we have ward-wise material recovery facilities. And we have got people to fund these material recovery facilities. We have been working with UNDP, corporates like Coca-Cola, HDFC, and many others who have come and help us set up these material recovery facilities. For us, this is the way forward. This is the only way forward. And this is how we will succeed. Thank you for having me here and allowing me to give my practical experience on field on how we have managed plastic in Panjim. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you so much. I think fascinating. And one of our promises that as soon as we can, one of us is going to come down and understand from you exactly how the 16 fraction plastic collection happens and really look at the material recovery projects that you have. And more importantly, I think what is very important, and I think that's where your experience will help other municipalities as well, is how can those fractions of plastic as you collect them, how do you educate both the households to do the segregation in 16 different ways? And how do you process those 16 different ways differently? Because that's something that when we did a meeting with municipalities a few months ago, when the Secretary Urban Development had released our report on segregation, we found that was one of the biggest issues that municipalities were asking is really the practical experience of doing this on the ground. So we will call upon you again. We are going to be staying with this agenda. We are going to be pushing this agenda. Atin is here and his colleagues are going to be working on this. So we look forward to working with you on this. I have, just as always, just incredible number of questions, incredible number of people who have joined. And if I look at my chat box, my Q&A box is just filling up. I think the most important thing, I mean, firstly, Sanjeev, there is someone who has written 16 ways of segregation. Kudos to you. I think that's very important. Somebody has also written ban on carry bags highlighted, but shopping malls are using even a single candy and poly packing. Very important. I think, this is what we are all saying, that it's not just the carry bag, but really our culture of packaging everything in plastic, which is going to be a very big issue. And as Sanjeev, and I think one of the things that we will look forward to also, Sanjeev said, and this is what CSC's belief is, that there's a certain amount of products that need to be banned. Not everything, but certain amount of products need to be banned. And I also take back from Sanjeev his point that we need to look at co-processing more carefully to understand the value of co-processing and what can be done. And then, of course, we need to look at segregation and reuse. So it's a complete agenda that needs to be done. And I think that really is our promise to all of you. And I hope I've run out of time, but I hope that all of you accept the fact that this is something that we will continue to work. I have been asked, somebody has also asked, what is 16-point segregation? And again, Sanjeev, If you can explain that in a minute, I'll leave it to you. Otherwise, we are going to come back and maybe do a separate webinar on Goa and the effort that you're making. But Sanjeet, please. How do you do 16 points?
So we have, I wish I had some photographs to show, but we have started this at colony level. And where there are no colonies, we have set up this material recovery facilities, and we have made fractions. HDP comes as a fraction, LDP comes as a fraction, rubber comes as a fraction. So at the housing level, at the housing colony level, if there are, say, 100, 200 apartments, when the waste is being brought down, the colony has a team, and they have a material recovery facility in this colony also. So they put them in these fractions, and there are two aspects to it. We have a buyback policy with these colonies. So we certain valuable fractions the municipality buys from its residents. So we have given a value so that these workers in the colonies get this money. It does not go to the colony, but it goes to these workers. So they segregate it further, better, and it is incentivized. We get cleaner waste, recycling happens better. So these are the processes which we have followed. The types of fractions can be explained to you. Wherever there are single hold houses, of course, it cannot be done 16-way. These are being collected separately, and it goes into material recovery facility. Hotels, hotels and restaurants are big bulk generators for Panjim. We have worked with each one of them, and when you were in Goa, I have shown you, right from a Taj to smallest restaurant, segregates these fractions. There is no way that they can, their waste is picked up if it is not segregated in such a fraction. Each bulk generator has been given a number. Their waste is in a numbered bag. It can be tracked at the lowest level, and if it is not segregated, they are pulled up. But more or less now the city lives with this segregation model of ours. Everyone has accepted it. So we have also worked in schools where this education has been going on, a chapter on segregation and a practical field visit of a material recovery facility is mandatory for every school in our city. So these are measures which has continued this process in people's mind, and this mindset change in the citizenry has brought about this valuable change which we have. I think seeing is believing, and if your team comes, we will be happy to host them.
No, in fact, Sanjeet, I have my colleagues have, I showed them your stamp program, and it's such a brilliant idea to get children to do recycling and for you to give stamps to them. I mean, that was that program that you showed me, and now it's some years ago. I have been really influenced by it, and we are trying to see how we can replicate it. So, thank you so much for all the efforts that you have made, and we will certainly learn more from you. We will certainly take this work forward. Atin, I will take one last question that I have, which is really about a big issue, which is about incineration. And there is a lot of fear about raw material plastic going into cement kilns. And will that actually add to air pollution? Now, Sanjeet, if you want to say something, I have something to say on it. Essentially, if you look at it, cement kilns actually have temperatures at such high levels that you could burn anything in it and it would not lead to a dioxin problem. I mean, dioxin creation is very much to do with both the temperature, the design of the incinerator, but also the temperature control that exists when the gas is released and how quickly you will cool the gas. So there are technical issues in terms of how you will control the pollution from plastic emissions. And certainly cement plants with their extremely high incineration rate, their temperatures are so high that as yet, the CPCB, which has worked on co-processing, has not red flagged this problem at all. The problem, I think, and that's why we will look at co-processing now that Sanjeet has put it on our table, we will look at it further. My problem with co-processing has been much more the economics of co-processing, where cement plants are not close enough to cities and they are not taking the waste, and the transportation of the waste has cost a lot of money to cities. But as Sanjeet also has told us, and we will look at it, whether the increase in the amount of plastic waste to cement plants is possible, that we can actually increase the substitution of coal in cement plants using plastic and other municipal waste. So we'll certainly look into that. Sanjeet, yes?
See, we have to be very practical, Sunita. If you have a gutka packet, which is non-recyclable, it ends up in a landfill.
Yeah.
So, and on the other side, someone is burning coal. We have talked about import of plastic. We are also importing coal.
Yeah.
It comes to the port in Goa and it is being transported elsewhere. So that thermal substitution rate, TSR, of a cement plant, my point is 1 ton of coal has to be transported to them. It comes from as far as Australia.
Yeah.
My plastic is going from Goa to Karnataka.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let us look at the bigger picture. If I don't send it there, I have to put it in a landfill. Now we have taken a conscious decision that we are going to be landfill free.
Yeah.
And we do not want incinerators, more incinerators to come. Cement kilns for us are incinerators. They are already there. Let's live with what we have rather than build more. So this is the only point which we have. It's a logical point, definitely. Otherwise, every government will want an incinerator to put these gutka packets which come out by the millions and straws which come out by the millions. We cannot recycle this. It is established. Either it goes to the landfill or it goes into some sort of incineration.
Yeah.
So my point is we have to work very seriously to use and increase this thermal substitution rate for the betterment of our society.
I think, Sanjeet, just before I end, and I just want to clarify to everybody that I think we are all, and Sanjeet also talked about it, I talked about it in my presentation, we are not talking about only incineration. We are talking about segregation at source. We are talking about banning certain products that can and must be banned because either they cannot be recycled or the cost of incineration is even too high. We are talking about not building new incinerators. We are talking about one possible disposal form could be the incineration in existing cement kilns that exist. So I think it's a whole package of things that we are talking about. So people should not take back from this discussion that we are promoting incineration only. I think we are promoting good management and we are promoting segregation, sorting out, recycling, and what cannot be recycled and what can be banned could be incinerated, but that also needs to be done in very controlled circumstance. So I think we're talking about a whole series of things. But I think, Atin, one of the questions that you will have and we should look at further is the whole issue of co-processing, is the whole issue of incineration in cement plants. How does it work? What are the economics of it? What are the temperatures at which it can burn? And what is the substitution of coal that is possible? These are all part of the research that we have to do. The final word is really about gutka, and let me be very clear to everybody who's asked a lot of questions on gutka. I think pouches should be banned. And the 2016 regulation was very clear that gutka and all other small sachets should be banned. Now, it is impossible to recycle those. It is impossible to collect them, sort them, segregate them. So I think that's something we need to think about. But yes, as somebody has mentioned, small is beautiful and powerful, and small pouches are now being used in rural population. And that's where they get access to affordable stuff, which they would not have if the pouches were not in plastic and were not small. So I think these are the dilemmas, these are the issues, and we will continue to research them, and we will continue these issues to you. But I think for the moment, I'm going to wind this up. I'm 15 minutes above time, but I think fascinating discussion, and thank you, Atin, for organizing this. Atin, back to you.
So thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. It was a very vibrant and very inspiring presentation, and we would look forward to visit Panjim to learn more from you and learn more from the ground level practices, to come back and help the other cities to learn from you. We already have a forum of cities that segregate, and I think Panjim is definitely going to be one of the best examples that we can set for others to learn. So at this onset, I thank Sunita ma'am for wonderfully moderating these sessions with Geeta ma'am, Dr. Prashant Gargava, and Mr. Sanjit Rodriguez. And I'm also thanking all the participants who have joined us through this WebEx platform as well as through live streaming. We have noted all the questions that we couldn't answer because of paucity of time, but we'll try to answer them as much as possible in whichever form we can. We'll get back to you, and we will try to put out a report on this as soon as possible on the outcome of this discussion. And be rest assured that we will take this agenda forward to kind of best position ourselves to deal with this problem of plastic waste management. So thank you very much. With this, we are closing this session.
Thank you, Atin. Thank you. Thank you, Sanjit. Thank you very much. Thank you.